So, welcome everyone. Let's get this party started. It's been another 3 months or so with a ton of stuff that has happened in between. Tons of stuff has happened for LiveStore. Tons of stuff has happened just in programming, software engineering generally, with like all the AI craze that certainly has also completely changed the way how I've been working. So this is an interesting one. So for those new, I'm Johannes Schickling. I'm based in Berlin. I'm the founder of Over Engineering Studio, where I'm working on Overtone and also work on LiveStore. Been working on LiveStore for now like roughly 5 years. And I'm also hosting the Local First podcast called Local First FM. And in the past, I've been the founder of Prisma. So for those of you who are completely new to LiveStore, LiveStore is the data layer that I've built for myself working on Overtone, where I was looking around for something like what is like the data twin to React, something that is like declarative. You can still build fast, nice applications with it. I wanted something that's fast, has synchronous data access, and allows me to ultimately build apps that run smooth at 120 FPS. Didn't find anything. And now 5 years in building the thing that I was looking for. And it needs to kind of be syncing first. So I want to have like a Git style syncing approach. I have a high bar for a good developer experience, and I want the thing to be pluggable. So that's LiveStore in a nutshell. The data workflow with LiveStore, you can imagine roughly like this, where you have like data kind of going in a circle as it changes. So you ultimately have like a database that you want to query that drives the state. That state renders your UI, and from the UI, a user can do things that commits events, and those events ultimately end up in the database again, but those events are also then pushed across other clients, and this is how everyone ends up with the same stuff, similar to Git push and pull. So that's LiveStore in a nutshell. And yeah, let's dive into today's office hours. So we're starting out with a couple of exciting announcements. Then I want to give an update on version 0.4. There's a lot of interesting work in there. And then we have 2 super exciting presentations from the community, from Kelly about Anode, which is an agentic notebook environment similar to Jupyter notebooks. And then just Martin working on WorkSquared, which is also an agentic product, but more of an even more general purpose for an agentic work environment. Really excited to learn more about both. There seems to be a pattern here. Then there's a couple of other community projects which I want to showcase. I want to shed a bit of light on some ongoing research. And then we have Igor also presenting some of his own research on commands versus events. And if time allows, we can do some questions and answers. So I'll try to keep an eye out on the chat. So if you have any questions in between, please, just ask them there. If anyone who's joined this call can let me know if I'm missing anything, please chime in. All right, let's go. So the biggest thing that I want to announce that I'm really, really excited about, since so far I was really the only person consistently working in the chapter of LiveStore. Before LiveStore, I was working together with Jeffrey Litt and Nicholas Schiefer on Riffle, which is the predecessor. But LiveStore is sort of like my solo journey for the last couple of years. And I'm very excited that Igor is now helping as a full-time contributor. And that is made possible by Zero Email having become a design partner. So that means they're helping sponsor the development of LiveStore, which allows Igor to work on this, and he's working on some really cool things. So I'm very excited about that. And I'm also very excited that I'll be speaking at VidConf in Amsterdam next month. And in case you're going there in person or you're joining remotely, I'm looking forward to connecting there as well. Alrighty, so far for the announcements. Let's get into LiveStore 04 update. So the biggest one here is the work I've been doing integrating with Cloudflare. So I'm not sure who in the audience has played around with Cloudflare, has maybe some stuff deployed there. I had some stuff on there in the past, but over the past couple of months, I've been like developing a whole much deeper of an intuition and understanding of the powerful primitives that Cloudflare offers. So I want to start with that actually. I want to give you a bit of an intuition for the primitives that LiveStore will be embracing for the syncing provider that LiveStore provides, and as well as the LiveStore adapter. That means you can build a client-side application running on the server on Cloudflare, which enables a couple of like really cool use cases. So there's a few primitives that I just want to accustom you to. So the first one is a Cloudflare worker. So think about a Cloudflare worker like a HTTP function, basically. I'll show you that to you in a diagram in a second. Then we're going to try to understand what is a durable object, and a database is also a thing here. And what this gives us and what makes this so attractive, in my opinion, is that we're going to get basically the best of all worlds. We get something that is serverless, and depending on your load patterns and scaling patterns, etc., I think this can be incredibly cost effective. Scales down to 0, and I think is perfect for like honestly like any projects at any scale. Maybe at some point when you really have like constant workloads, maybe you're better off with something much more serverful. But I think this is a great catch-all for many projects. So what's so attractive about this for me is that it gives me a very simple mental model of like stateless compute. And the stuff that I want to be stateful, that is either infrastructure that Cloudflare manages, for example, WebSocket connections. I want them to be stateful, to maintain that connection. And this is so cool about that Cloudflare durable objects provide that basically I don't pay for CPU if the durable object currently doesn't process any JavaScript, yet the WebSocket connection is still kept up. And LiveStore takes care of like the stateful state, like the stateful stores. And I'm trying to make the entire thing reactive through the primitives here. So let's take a look at some of the infrastructure diagrams here that I've been thinking about. We also have Sunil from the Cloudflare team here on the call. So please call me out if I'm saying anything stupid here. So let's take a look here. Where is my browser? There we go. So I want to start very boring, which is something like this. That I've said, like, what is a Cloudflare worker? In this very simple scenario where we might have like a Vite frontend app, could be anything. This could be like a curl terminal. Like the way how you could use a Cloudflare worker is by implementing a server-side fetch function, and that fetch function gets a request. You can do JavaScripty things here, call another API endpoint, return hello world in plain text, application, JSON, whatever you want. That very simple use case. And it's basically like you can see this as a replacement for AWS Lambda at this point. And yeah, super fast, super easy mental model, works really well. The next interesting thing is where you can, like this thing itself does not really have a brain, or like a brain in terms of like, does not have memory. So like that it can remember stuff. This is where you can work around this in a few different ways. You could, for example, from this talk directly to a SQLite database or to any other database for that matter. But this is where we're going to embrace durable objects for now. Since one of the things that durable objects have these days is an embedded SQLite database. So, and a durable object, honestly, is like, it's just worthwhile studying those and developing a bit of an intuition for it. It's one of the most mind-blowing and most differentiated computing primitives and paradigms that I've kind of like seen in cloud over the last couple of decades. So in this case, we're gonna embrace the request response pattern, which is like this thing implements a request, a fetch function. So this, like the Vite app sends a request to the Cloudflare worker. And in case here, it doesn't directly answer it, but it actually forwards that request or sends a new request to the durable object. And that durable object now like sends back a response, and that sends it back to the response. So just keep in mind that this is like always the pattern when we're using a durable object. You can't directly talk to it. You need to go through this Cloudflare worker. And in there, you can do whatever you want. In this case, we're kind of like proxying You could also, from this worker, talk to multiple durable objects. And this is, in fact, like how the current generation LiveStore sync works, where basically your LiveStore client app talks to a worker. That worker directly looks up a Cloudflare durable object for your sync backend. And then what it does, it responds not directly with a response, but it actually responds with a WebSocket connection. So this is another way how you can use Cloudflare primitives. And this is how, like LiveStore version 0.3, this is how it currently works. This is just, whether you use LiveStore or not, very powerful primitives that you can use in many, many different ways. And I just wanted to form a bit of an intuition for like what those primitives mean, since what we want to look into now, and this is where my pre-created diagrams end, is a couple of different scenarios. So there's maybe the scenario where we want to do this, but in here it wouldn't just be like a normal WebSocket connection, but through this WebSocket connections, we want to do LiveStore events. So that this basically enables this mechanism. This thing we only need to like initially establish the connection. So we can ignore that for the time being. Here we would say this is like a LiveStore sync backend. And this thing basically sends around like push and pulls events. So, and this is where we basically have like client A, let's call this like Bob, and over here we have Alice, and Alice also does push pull. This is how LiveStore currently works, and you always currently use WebSocket connections, which is great. But I wanted to, there was a bunch of feedback for different scenarios where maybe you don't always want to keep a WebSocket connection around for this. Maybe you want to kind of warm up a store for a given related object, etc. So additionally to this, using WebSockets, now the next generation of LiveStore will also support HTTP as a transport protocol. So that means you can fully push and pull. Like basically Bob and Alice could still talk to each other and have like a live app with each other, but going through HTTP. The reactivity in this case would need to be polling based, or you could also use HTTP streams. You would probably use it more for like pre-warm-up scenarios, but that is now something that is possible. So this is something I'm really excited that is changing and improving. Then the other thing that is changing is, so far we've always defaulted the sync backend to using a remote or like a detached separate SQLite database, D1 SQLite database. But given that DOs now these days come with their own SQLite database directly embedded, this is now also something that LiveStore now supports. And so you can now choose between one of those patterns. So I'm really excited about that. Like my goal was really to let the application developer, choose whatever primitive you think is right for your architecture, that you can design around the trade-offs that you want. If you say you actually don't need the real-timeness and you just want to have something that is like as simple and cheap as possible, maybe you go with the HTTP connection here. And so you just get a lot of different options. So, but now let's get to the most interesting thing of this entire, which is here, Alice and Bob would be like actual like users, where let me attempt drawing something here. So that this is an actual user. This is also an actual user. Give those the benefit of being fully visible. However, you could now also imagine another scenario where in this app here, you actually have like a robot. So like agent X, and this agent would now also like to collaborate on our application. And so like that's basically was one of the main questions I wanted to explore. And like, what is that? So far, you could basically try to do that through the LiveStore node adapter. And the LiveStore node adapter, this is basically where you would have like a server somewhere, like a AWS EC2 instance or wherever you want to deploy this. And so you would basically have now like probably a pretty beefy server somewhere connecting to the sync backend and also listening for push and pull. It could, for example, also just only pull and kind of like observe what is happening. And that agent could, for example, then do stuff like send emails or whatever you want to do here, basically, or back up data. It could do a lot of those things. Obviously, it could also push itself. So you could model this as a more authoritative kind of actor in the system. But yeah, given that you had to run this through like a proper serverful server right now was like, I feel like we can do better for many scenarios. And I wanted to see like, hey, could we actually use the same Cloudflare durable object primitive for this? And this is exactly what I've been working on. This has led me to some very, very interesting corners of those primitives. I had to do some very interesting things. I shared some of those war stories with Sunil, and maybe I'll write some blog posts about those. But that's basically the idea, is like running this thing here on a Cloudflare durable object as well, where like this thing actually doesn't need to be online 24/7. But this thing can actually run just when it needs to, just like when Bob pushes an event to the sync backend, and then this agent pulls that message. It does a little bit of processing, a little bit of compute, and then it can go to sleep again. And in fact, you can go much more wild with this. You could, for example, say you could go like all microservice architecture on this if you want to. Not that you should, but you could. And like you could have like a ton of like agent Z. Like you could have all of those different durable objects kind of dangling on this, and it would be still like super easy to do. So if this is too abstract, let's take a look at an actual demo. So here I have been building a little example app. Just while I've been working on this, I wanted to see, is this thing working? And you bet it was not working most of the time. So I needed to make it work. And this was sort of like my example app. So yeah, this is a mostly vibe-coded chat example app. And I asked Claude to help me make it a little bit more behave like iMessage. If you want to, hopefully they don't sue me for using the iMessage thing. Already confused a few people when I demoed this with. So if you want to try, this is just going to take you to like a random chat here. So I've already have this opened here. This is, don't have my audio shared, but you can like try this out by yourself. When I send something here, message 1, 2, 3, like, and if I now open this in another browser, let's do this here. So I'm now opening this over here. This is in another browser. And I'm now like user 2. Notice that I see all of those messages from over here. And if I say here, hi, what's up? Ooh, okay, I seem to get an error that I need to look into and fix. Let's do this again. Shouldn't do those live demos. Okay, let's do this one more time. User 1 and user 2. Okay, hi, what's up? So we already see a few interesting things. We see like read receipts. We see obviously the message appearing in real time. If I'm sending something, one thing that's also interesting is like you hear like you see that I'm hearing something. So that is working. You can also do reactions here. And you also see that there's like a default reaction here for every message that I'm sending. Someone is already going in here. Oh, wow. Yes, I was hoping this wasn't happening. Kudos, y'all. So let's see when is this gonna explode and reveal the next bugs that I need to fix. But what is cool about this is like this little robot reaction here. And this robot reaction is actually triggered by a durable object and not by a human. Some of those are like triggered probably by a human. I don't expect you to have already built a durable object client for this. So this is probably exposed by a human. And I just want to show briefly like how that looks like, since this is basically showing the full power of this, that like this reaction here is coming from an agent that just like listens to the same messages and then reacts to it and communicates something back. And yeah, it's basically the same paradigm. So let's take a super quick look at this here. On a very high level, this file here, this is the only file, the only Cloudflare related file, 200 lines of code, all kind of like very application specific. We see three things here. We see the sync backend. So this guy, the rest of the app is the client app, so that's the chat. And then we see this one, the LiveStore client, or you can call this whatever you want. So this would be this, and this is the thing that like emits those. This was the other chat. This is the thing that emits this reaction. And so let's just take a look at the sync backend. Is just like the default LiveStore sync backend where you could implement your business logic constraints here. And then the client itself, this is where it just does a few debugging things. That's not interesting. What is more interesting is like that it basically sets up the store. The API will be simplified further. But here, this is basically just a normal LiveStore instance that you know from a client-side app as well. In fact, this is a client-side app, just happens to run on our serverless server. And here, we're basically doing the interesting thing where we have a query where we basically want to get all messages. This is basically the way how we express this logic here. So we want to get all messages. We are filtering it down by like, let's see the messages that we've already processed. This is like all like vibe code quality, so this should be improved a lot, but you get the idea. So we're basically pruning this down to messages that a bot hasn't reacted to. And then we're simply committing this reaction, which is what's going to give us this little thing. And then we're just also committing that we have processed this message. And yeah, that's basically it. Like you can as you can on a client side, subscribe to queries. You can do that now in a durable object. And the way how the reactivity is kind of kept up to date is that if this thing gets a new event, it basically notifies the subscribed durable objects. And so we basically just need to implement this hook. And then in the worker, this is really just a proxy where we're saying like, hey, is this thing, if we're trying to talk to it, so there's like this Cloudflare worker in between that proxies, and where it basically says, are you trying to talk to the durable object, or are you trying to talk to the sync backend? And with that, you can do some really interesting things. So for example, here, this client-side app can, let me actually connect to this one, since this one is on localhost. So on this client-side app, I can connect the LiveStore dev tool, so I can see what's going on here. But you bet that I also want to enable that for the actual Cloudflare durable object, so you can connect the dev tools to it. That is not fully implemented yet, but one thing that already points in that direction is if I'm reloading this, I just initially ping the durable object here and check its state here. So right now, we basically just get all the messages and so on. But I've also implemented an endpoint here where you can say /db. And what this does, it downloads the SQLite database from the durable object. And this is basically where we can look into the brain of the durable object, what it has seen, which messages it has processed, etc. So we get all the same building blocks, all the same primitives that we know from LiveStore from the client side. We still get on the client side, just in a durable object. So I think that's incredibly cool. I'm very excited where this is going. Been working on it for quite a while, and there's still a lot of work that needs to happen. You saw like the little error message there. There's one of many, but I think it's good enough to start experimenting with. And lots of good stuff in there. And I want to briefly welcome Sunil on the metaphorical stage and just let him share some reflections as well, if you want.
Hi, Johannes. Such very exciting work. It's been actually crazy seeing it come to this place. Some folks might know me. I've been obsessed with durable objects for about 4 years now. And it's really cool that actually durable object, sure, but like part of me just wants to stop writing raw HTTP API calls because I write something like 10 prototypes a week. And I just want to throw LiveStore at it. So one of the things I'm excited about, of course, is that my application will become faster and simpler for me to write because I'm stupid when it comes to writing code. But the thing that I'm very particularly excited about LiveStore when compared to other players in the space is how I don't want to say like agent first, but the fact that a server-side process can be a client, much like a human or whatever else, that can then connect to these things and do actions on the store is incredibly exciting to me, because I'm one of those fools who believes that there are going to be 1,000 times more agents than humans using computers and interacting with computers. And you don't want to have a different interface for them. You want to build one application. Sure, you build a view in React for humans, but it's really the same interface that other agentic organisms can interact with these systems. And I think the LiveStore solution is particularly great because it's the same both ways. And seeing it happen with durable objects is particularly exciting. I think you've found all the edge cases of durable objects that have made you very mad and aggravated. So welcome to the last 4 years of my life, Johannes. I am so excited to play with this. Like I basically ping Johannes every week saying, hey, can I play with this? Can I play with this? Can I play with this? And now I can play with it. So my weekends are screwed, my guy. Like this is just the thing I'm going to be doing right now. I particularly like the idea, I think I was telling you about this earlier, which is being able to connect the LiveStore dev tools to a background process and then not just see what's going on there, but like edit it in a browser UI. It's kind of mind-boggling to be able to do that with a fully distributed system. Like you can say, hey, I have a bug with my app. Can you jump onto it? And you do that, and then you connect to their data store. And I'm very excited about all the possibilities this enables. It seems like I'm looking forward to putting two abstractions on top of your library and taking credit for all your work. It's going to be good for me.
Well, thanks so much for your kind words, and thanks so much for helping to make all of this happen in collaboration with Cloudflare. This is I've been I think I've been telling you in the past that I've like been very close a few months ago to like just saying, okay, whatever, I'll try to attempt this. Just to how long could it take? How hard could it be? And now 2 months in, just like mostly working on this, like it is very hard. Just to give you a little bit of an idea of like the things I had to do, since the Cloudflare durable object comes with SQLite. However, it doesn't give me the same fully featured flavored SQLite that I'm enjoying on the client, where I have like two SQLite extensions enabled. And so durable objects give me a way more locked down version of SQLite. And so this was like a puzzle that I was fighting with for 2 weeks. And so my initial approach was basically, okay, let the Cloudflare durable objects limitations bend me and bend LiveStore so that LiveStore tries to re-architect itself around the constraints of SQLite and durable objects. But that was just like too much of an impedance mismatch, too many things that LiveStore really relies on that it doesn't support. But then I thought like, okay, maybe I'm coming back to my initial idea, which I discarded because I thought it was crazy, which is Cloudflare workers and durable objects support WASM. Well, how do you run SQLite in the browser? You run it through WASM. But how do you store data on the browser? There is no SQLite storage, at least none that's exposed. So you always in the browser to store data, you need to go through IndexedDB or OPFS. So I thought, okay, I should really not do this, but I'm trying it. And so what I've basically done is like I am using the Cloudflare durable object SQLite as a key value store where I'm running my version of SQLite in WASM in durable objects, and I basically save the SQLite pages and blocks into the SQLite of durable objects. So yeah, I will probably write a blog post on this, which it's something that I didn't want to do, but it proved to be very effective. And yeah, it's like one of the many things that I had to do to make this work. But yeah, it's been very fun, and I'm super excited for what this will unlock. We're running a little bit short on time. We have a lot of other exciting demos and so on. So I briefly rush through the rest of my update. But thanks so much, Sunil, again for coming on. All right, wonderful. I will jump back into it. Let's see. All right, perfect. So a few other things that are happening in 0.4. Like you can follow actually the full list here in the changelog, which is here in the dev.docs/livestore.dev. This is where over here in the changelog, you see the full list of everything that I'm working on. It's a lot. So this is where you can keep track of everything that's already done and everything that is yet to be done. Some of the exciting things there is if you are an enjoyer of effect schemas, you can actually use those now directly to define your SQLite tables. Now I'm also automatically detecting when a materializer is impure. So that means like you accidentally say date.now or new date, or like you generate a UUID in there. That's now detected and should help you follow the rules of materialization. I'm also shipping a new SQLite version, tons of bug fixes, even more internal like testing. I later have a slide of like where I'm spending most of my time. Spoiler alert, is basically 50% of my time is just on testing and debugging. So a lot of work is just going into that. And I'm also leaning heavily into agentic development these days. So I'm trying to remodel the monorepo that it works well in that regard. And once all of those things are done, I'm very excited to start to work or continue to work on the Redwood SDK support, which goes hand in hand with the Cloudflare work I've been doing. And I'm also very excited to bring support for a new sync backend, which is with S2, which should also work super well in combination also with durable objects, etc. So very excited about all of this. Mentioned this before. I've been just reflecting on like how I'm spending my time. I wish in like Fantasyland, I would probably spend 95% of my time on like feature development. But the gruesome reality of like a open source developer that attempts to build something in distributed systems land is more dominated by this. I just thought this was interesting to share. And yeah, it is already good enough to give it a try. So it's released under the dev npm tag. So you can upgrade your dependencies and give it a try. The changelog should contain all upgrade instructions, etc. And please share your feedback. When is it going to come out? Hopefully this month. The more feedback I get, the more confidence I can build to cut a release. So the more you can help test and provide feedback, the better. All right, handing it over to our first community presentation. I'm super excited to announce Cal Kelly, who is working on Anode, I think mostly as a nighttime project where he is reinventing Jupyter notebooks on top of LiveStore. So I'm handing it over to Kyle.
Sweet, thank you. Let me share screen. Okay, so you might see me on the Discord. I'm a duck, and that's because my gaming profile and my work profile, they're all the same. I'm not changing those. And I like realized it after people were like, wait, who's this? I was like, oh, right. Anyway, so I've been working on a notebook. I used to work on notebooks at Netflix and Rackspace. I've basically been a Jupyter Core contributor for over 13 years. And there's always been one thing that really bugs me in Jupyter, which is that your state for the notebook is almost all entirely in the front end. People think like, you open up this notebook, you're going to work with it. And while the kernel state, like your Python runtime that you're working with, it's got its own state that's separate from the document. And whenever you get outputs, they come all the way up to your browser tab, and then you save the entire JSON document down. You're not like pushing a delta change on what's changed for it. And at Netflix, this was like a really, really big problem, but people were living with it. But it meant that if somebody was running a long Spark job or maybe even just Hive query or Presto query in their notebook, they would walk to the parking lot with their laptop open, just waiting for results to come in so that they could close their laptop lid, which is like, I feel bad. I'm causing a like work-life balance issue because we're not like synchronizing the data. So after that, we did a startup that was based on some of the notebooks work we were doing at Netflix, and we solved this problem. And it was very similar to what LiveStore was doing, but we were inspired by CoCalc, a different notebook that was also open source, where we basically were just doing Redux everywhere, and we were applying these deltas, and so we had to have atomic events that were going to work well across everything. And effectively, everyone was synchronizing their deltas. We would store it in Postgres, and our like main layer on the front end was Redux observable with RxJS. And I think there were some things that we had that I wish that we had in LiveStore, like a way to squash down the deltas, because eventually the event log gets really big, and a lot of the old events you don't need. Maybe you want them for an audit log. But anyways, enough of that story. I should show what a notebook is in case people don't know. Basically, a notebook is a REPL where you can go back and change previous inputs and then look at those outputs and work with them. So this is really common for data analysis and exploratory data analysis. So like here, I've got a Google Sheet that I'm actually reading into Python. To sandbox this thing, I actually have it in Pyodide, and the Pyodide is running in Dino. So obviously I could run this whole thing in the browser and sync it, and we will do that. But I wanted to solve this like remote runtime piece first, because that's where I'm going to do GPU work. That's where I'm going to do heavier computational loads. But prototype-wise, it was really great to use LiveStore's Node backend, but in Dino. So I guess this is also a way to say, hey, it works in Dino. And yeah, so I've got sheets here. I can display them. The way that these work is that in IPython and Jupyter is that objects have a representation. So you can emit an object and say, oh, this is a text HTML representation or markdown or images or whatever. And so that's why you see the like interspersing of just raw text data or plots directly. Just as like an aside on both notebooks and LiveStore is that I don't want to put images in the event log. And so I offload those to R2. I'm like forgetting where I put things, like the artifact storage. So I just need to put it over in blob storage and then load those separately. And yeah, that's the notebook basics part of this. But what else I want to show?
Awesome.
Yeah, go ahead. Yep. Yeah, did you have something? Should I call it good there? I had a little bit to show.
Oh, I mean, basically, whatever feels like, I think the big aha moments for me was basically, okay, this already looks like very polished. So whenever a stable product gets a do-over, I get excited. But then to also understand, like, what is like the thesis? What do you want to do like fundamentally different? Like the light bulb moment for me was really about like, okay, when I tried Jupyter Notebooks and I used it like very little, but I immediately ran into this. Like I basically had something running, I clicked play, whatever, I closed the tab, reopened it, like, hey, where's my work? And this was pre-AI, like having a expectation of collaborating with everyone. It's just like not having a terrible experience by myself. And so flipping this around where you get the best of both worlds, not like another way of like how you can have this shared with someone else is basically having this be a VNC where you get to remote view like another screen somewhere. But that's like what local first enables us, right? So we basically work on it local, which Jupyter Notebook was always local, but now we get the best of both worlds. So that is super exciting. And Like you continue like to share little demos that just like blow my mind. I think you had like a terminal UI experience somewhere
Yeah,
else as
I'm
well.
curious if
And yeah,
it's working. I was tempted to demo it. I was like, I better test that before I try it again. The can all the LiveStore stuff works in a TUI, so you can use Ink in React with LiveStore and have a TUI for your LiveStore app. So that's really cool.
that is so awesome. Yeah, I want to dive a lot deeper into those things, but I think we'll probably have to do that in a separate dedicated session. But maybe closing out, like, which stage is the project currently in? Are you looking for people like giving it a try? Are you looking for contributors? Maybe you can share a few more words about the project and
Yeah.
what
I think
goals you have for it.
we're really close to having people try it more. I mean, people can go to the website now. It's just there's no reliability concerns whatsoever. And I think a lot of the stuff that we wanted to get locked down. So there's security things that really matter within this. Like I want people to be able to share their data, work with AI. The way that our system works here too is that you're bringing your own compute. So you run the runtime agent. So when I'm running this Python code, or if I create an AI cell, I can like ask about the data above it. Like I want people to start to be able to use it so they can log in, they can get in. And I think there's more areas where we need to keep figuring out how to work with LiveStore more appropriately. If people want to get into it, like we're hitting a lot of we've touched a lot of LiveStore now, so it could be fun if people want to learn LiveStore and work with us. Like I'm happy to mentor and work with people on building it
That
up.
is awesome. Well, that's like it sounds like a really exciting opportunity. You're a true veteran in the field, like having worked at all of those different companies. You know, in Jupyter Notebook inside out, and I really appreciate you sharing all of the amazing feedback over the months on LiveStore. So yeah, when I saw this first, I got super excited, and I still get super excited about it. So thanks so much for giving a first presentation on this today. I'm very certain, or I'm very interested in seeing a lot more over the coming months.
Thank you.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much again, Kyle. Next up, we have Jess Martin. Jess and I are friends for many years and get to see each other at least once a year for some local first opportunities in person. And I got really excited this year as in Berlin when he shared some more ideas for the project he's currently working on called WorkSquared, which back then was way more fuzzy and now is like a very concrete real thing that like you can use, and I think Jess uses on a daily basis together with his work partner. So let's move it over to Jess.
Hey y'all. Yeah, thanks Johannes for having me. So yeah, we've been using LiveStore now for about 3 months to build a project called WorkSquared. And WorkSquared, you can go check out like a blank website at worksquared.ai. But WorkSquared is a workspace where humans and agents can work together in real time. So much of this call, I'm just sitting here nodding along like a bobblehead of yes, Sunil, like we need like a shared data layer for agents and humans to be able to interact. And whatever a human should be able to do, an agent should be able to do. And so that's one of the like four core foundational principles for Work Squared is it's all just events, yo. Like agents can use tools and instantiate those events. Humans can do them through the React layer. It's all the same thing. And so you kind of have this shared environment. So I'll give a real quick demo of, like Johannes mentioned, I'm actually using WorkSquare daily now. So it's at the point where it's been useful for several weeks, and we're at the point where we're starting to share it with people. So let me pull up my WorkSquared. Hopefully I'm sharing the right thing. All right, cool. So this is WorkSquared, very much a vibe-coded UI, but because I've been focused mainly on getting the primitives right. But in this workspace, you have projects, you have things like a Kanban board for each project, you have documents, you have like contacts. All of these things will probably end up being MCP connections to external systems, but it's just easier to build them inside of WorkSquared to not have to deal with like the synchronization issues, which is something else that I know that problem is coming, and I'm not looking forward to tackling it. But probably the most important thing is that you can create team members in here. So I can come in and create additional workers. I can assign them a model. I can give them a prompt. Got different types of workers. And then these are just teammates. They're no different than like another human working with me. This is a multiplayer environment, so I can invite other people into my session. I can create teammates in my session. So one of the projects I'm actually doing with AI is managing my 8-year-old son's soccer team. So I'm decent at soccer, but terrible at logistics. In fact, my opinion is logistics are what assistant coaches are for. But I don't have an assistant coach this year. And so I need to like email parents and coordinate snacks for games and all that kind of stuff. Super annoying. So I come in here and have an LLM called Soccer Aficionado that helps me like plan practices and things like that. So you can see I had this like very long dialogue with him where like I introduced the thing I'm doing. He built me a project. I've gone through and like tick off tasks and that kind of thing. So to give you a quick idea of like what I mean by I can do things and the agent can do things at the same time, we actually do have practice tomorrow, and I need to write an email to parents. So practice tomorrow, Friday, 5 at 6 p.m., and we have a game on Saturday at noon. So can you just write me the email so I don't have to like think about how to write it? Go ahead and hit return, and this should hopefully hit my server, which is watching for events that are happening. Let's see if the demo gods are with me this morning. Let's see. So what should happen is I should get a reply back with a email, but server may be down. We'll see, and we'll talk about like how this works in the background. I
Soon
would
to be
expect
a durable object.
it is, yeah. So well, I'm sure the sync worker is up. I'm not going to go into debugging mode since I don't want to consume a ton of time. But what this usually has given me is it like gives me you can kind of see examples of other tool use here where it's like updating a task, getting project tasks, basically every single event and query that exists in my events and my queries.ts, there is a tool that the agent has access to. So anything I can do in the front end, the agent can also do via tool use and has been doing a lot of that. Anyway, we'll bounce out of the demo since apparently that's not working. Let's see.
I'm sure it's just the latency is a bit longer.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. On the order of like I go kick the server and it comes back up. All right, so window, I'm back to here. So I wanted to talk quickly about some things about LiveStore. I'll skip this slide because everybody knows LiveStore is awesome and you get all this great cool stuff like dev tools and offline and multiplayer and blah 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 blah. I want to talk about the things that LiveStore doesn't give you because that's way more interesting. Really quickly, here's the architecture that I have for WorkSquared. So there's a React client. You can have multiple of them, obviously, that then have like that real-time UI that you get through the Cloudflare worker. We have authentication, which I'm going to talk about in just a second, how I manage authentication. We also have a Node.js server that's running the Cloudflare node adapter, which is where the agent stuff happens. And then all of that is all like synchronizing through LiveStore. So authentication, I just mentioned it. I bet Kyle's running into this too. How do you know whether someone should be able to do a thing or not? It's great that you can just, all of us jumped into Johannes's chat app because we all read the store ID from his URL and we know that he has no authentication on that thing. So we can all just chat immediately. Well, that's not very secure for, especially if I've got like LLM credits that are tied to this WorkSquared instance, right? So what we built was we have an auth worker that is actually doesn't have anything to do with LiveStore. Like it's just keeping track of users and their like do they have like permissions and that kind of stuff. That's all running in Cloudflare as well through a Cloudflare worker, a separate durable object that maintains a database key value store of all the users and what instance they have access to. So when you log in, you get back a JWT, and then we're basically just doing standard JWT auth on the handshake for the WebSocket connection. So that's how we gate it right now. We don't do every single event and bundle the JWT and decrypt them or anything like that. It's just, can you get a WebSocket connection or not? And you have to have a valid JWT to be able to get that WebSocket connection. Yeah, I mean, that's pretty much it. There's not a whole lot more to say there. I do have like grace period implementation. There's like, so what happens if an event gets offline, right? And what happens if your JWT expires while you're offline? So there's like a configurable grace period where you can say, it expired within this amount of time. So like, let's let it roll. And the reason you would want that is because once your JWT expires, you do want to like use the retry token to get another JWT immediately. So you do want to trigger that, but then you want to allow there to be like some generous offline period where they can't do that retry loop, and yet you don't lose those events. So anyway, that's one. But this is the bigger one, side effects. So anytime you connect a new client to LiveStore, it goes through all of the events and runs them. And that's how it materializes your SQLite database on that new client. Well, what if those events mean that you should go hit an LLM like with something or send an email? What are you going to do now? What the way that I'm handling this is probably not the best, but here's the the double whammy that's getting me to what the hopeful like exactly once execution, which this is not guaranteed to be. Martin Kleppman would roll over in his grave, roll over in his bed if he saw this.
No grave yet.
No grave yet, thankfully. Yeah, Martin, if you're listening. But anyway, so what I've got going on is I have an agentic server or like agentic's not the right word. I just have a Node.js server that has the Cloudflare, the LiveStore node adapter running on it, and I have one of them. And it is the one that is responsible for executing the side effects. Now, you would think that would be close to enough, but there's never exactly one of a thing, right? So in render, for example, which is where I'm currently hosting this, eventually we'll probably be hosting this in Cloudflare once 0.4 ships completely. But in render, when you do a new deployment, you actually have your existing deployment that's running, and so that you have zero downtime deployment. They start another one, and so for a brief moment in time, you have two until they like shut the other one down. And during that window, things can happen. And so, that the next step that we're doing here, and this is really gimpy. Like Johannes, I would love if there was a better way than this. I'm actually manually. Oh, so the question I wanted to ask in your chat app is like, what happens if I like brought up another one of those little agents that reacts to every message with robots? Wouldn't every message get another robot reaction?
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Well, no, it would re-execute the code,
Exactly.
and it would be idempotent. I think that's like another way how but you still need to. There's like another place where you need to keep track of this, and I think this is a pattern that we need to explore and make ergonomic. I think you're hitting the nail on its head in terms of pointing this out. And there's a lot of things that ergonomically can be improved. So for example, that the code looked as vibe grade in the chat app as it did in terms of like to even know like, hey, has a new message come in? That I listen to all messages, check which ones I've like that's a big workaround for a missing feature, which is that you can kind of like roll your own materializer. AKA just like listen to the events, man. And then like where do you want to start? Which guarantees do you want to have about listening? And luckily, materializing SQLite is side effect free, so it doesn't really matter whether you do something again or not. But that's the entire thing about like when you build with eventful systems, if you have streams, you gotta remember somewhere, and this could literally be whatever, like pen and paper, writing down somewhere and then redeploying your script with cursor pointing at event 500. We got to find out like ergonomic patterns for that.
Yeah,
but
that's what I'm doing.
Kyle,
It's
go
like
ahead.
I have a separate SQLite database where I write down every single chat message that's been processed, and every render instance that pops up is looking at that same shared disk. It's basically the durable object pattern, but render flavored for the moment. And that list, it basically says, has somebody processed this already? If not, then I guess I'll process it. But yeah, that's where I'm doing the accounting, so to speak.
But luckily, like keeping track of like what you've seen or not is semantically like very easy to grasp. So you can basically, this is for example where like a durable object, a D1 database could come in really handy, where you have like one global thing where you basically just keep that pointer and you make that like a global transaction. You could even say, hey, for that, you have a separate durable object that is only responsible for keeping track of like that. There's sky's the limit in terms of like how you can model this. Kyle, your hand is probably getting tired from like holding.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah,
it's okay.
Kyle.
No, the reason I was going to say it was that it's maybe crazy, but in our LiveStore schema, we have an execution queue. Now, obviously, this is because it's for cells, but if you're getting like the AI to respond and you're getting like streaming markdown or whatever, it's basically like the worker picks up the thing off the queue, assigns itself on the queue. This all goes to the event log, So on the event log, the worker's like, oh, I've accepted that chat. So somebody has it, which of course means that if something dies or whatever, you could have work that's accepted. It's like, I didn't know whether or not putting a distributed queue on the event log was a good idea, but it's working for the moment.
I definitely considered it. In fact, I have an ADR. I write like architecture decision records for everything, and I have one about using LiveStore as a queuing system. And I was reading it this morning. I was like, should I throw that on the slide? I didn't actually end up doing it, but man, maybe I should have. I need to try it.
Yeah, I think we should certainly follow up on that and explore that in depth a little bit more at a separate point. But I think queues certainly also have their role there. Sunil has just left, but Cloudflare also has first-class primitives for queues. So what you could, for example, do is either for now, like in your own client adapter, basically listen and just put it in a queue. And then for the side effect sensitive ones, they basically take it from the queue. That's a way how you can model this. Maybe at some point there could be like a first class LiveStore primitive for that. But I think it's all about like figuring out the right architecture, and LiveStore wants to be like bottom up primitives that you can compose. That is ultimately still your problem, but I want to make sure that LiveStore's primitives are rock solid.
Yeah, it's great.
But this is awesome. Thanks so much for sharing this. And I couldn't imagine like a higher praise than like you building a thing that you use on a daily basis. That is the same goal I'm chasing as well. Seems like you're closer to it than I am at this point.
You took a major detour, Johannes.
Well, trying to help everyone else with it. But thanks so much for presenting this. Same questions to you. Is this something that's currently only for you? Do you plan to launch this for others? Are you looking for users, for contributors?
Great question. Yeah, I'm working on this about half time right now, and the goal has certainly been to build something that's useful for myself and my co-founder that's working on it with me. We figured if it's not useful for us, then none of the rest of it matters. And so we're at the point where it was down over the weekend because I was doing the server migration, and it was painful that it was down. I'm like, okay, that's good. So I have a couple of friends that are using it. If you're interested in using it, feel free to reach out to me I'm on the LiveStore Discord or via Twitter, and I can get you into an account to like play around with it. But yeah, the other thing, if you're interested, I have code. It is source available on GitHub, and I have been using Claude Code to build most of it for the last several months. So it's a pretty interesting like story of how to use Claude Code to build a fairly complex multi-system thing. If you go through like the closed PRs, which there are like 170 of, then you get a pretty good sense of like how you can use Claude to build something fairly complex.
That is awesome. Yeah, we'll put a link to WorkSquared to the repo and in the links. But yeah, this is super exciting, and it's like directly both products, products wherever they fall on the spectrum are exactly the kind of things that I was not even hoping that, like I was in the fuzzy void of like whatever happens, but the shape of this is exactly what I was hoping would happen. So very, very excited that you're working on this, and hope to see a lot more like that in the future. So we are already running a little bit over time, but there's no one kicking us out of a room, so we'll just keep going for a little bit and cut things a little bit later. So as a next topic, I just want to like give a heads up about a couple of other areas that we're currently looking into. One is like, that's really like a top 5 common question about LiveStore. When you like, one, LiveStore is rarely enough. Like, for example, if you're looking at the chat app that we had before, maybe we had one chat room would be one LiveStore instance. Let's imagine we want to build out like a little Slack or Discord alternative with this. Then maybe per channel we have its own store, or per DM we have our own store. And sometimes you actually have those overlapping. Let's say you have maybe a thread is its own store. Then you have like sometimes in a React component or however you consuming this, you're dealing with multiple stores at the same time. So what are the ergonomics for that? That's something that I'm currently looking into. I have opened a pull request with a design draft here, which you're more than welcome to look into. So this is where you can see a draft of the API design that I've been exploring. So I would love some feedback on that. So that is one thing. And I'm really excited about how that's coming along. Another thing, much more experimental, but still like very interesting, is I've been exploring together with a friend what a LiveStore CLI and MCP could look like. In fact, there is actually a first version of the LiveStore CLI and MCP already. So currently, if we're looking into this, you can, I think, actually use it. So I was not planning to do this here, but let's see how wrong this goes. I think you can already do this. So let's do this briefly. Let's see what happens here. I'm running this. Does this do something? All right. Run through this once. All right. Okay. So we have a little CLI thingy that has a few commands. It has a MCP and it has a new project. So with a new project, you can, for example, let's say here, we say new project. When we're running this, we should already get a way to set up a new project. So for example, here we could download the CF chat example that we had from before. So this is already something that works and may be useful. The MCP server is also working, so we can run this. And there are 2 tool calls right now. So I think MCP server, and well, right now it's listening. There are 2 tool calls right now, and there will be a lot more. One that we just like created for the fun of it is the LiveStore schema coach, which is meant to like you point it at some LiveStore snippets, your schema, etc., and it would give you feedback. So a funny prompt you can do is like roast my schema, and you'll get some very amusing results. But I have some, this has mostly been like an exercise of like ideating what are some of the things that a LiveStore MCP could do. And the most interesting one that I came to think of right now is if you're looking at if you're building an app, and let's say you're starting out here, like in a new chat app, in a new chat room, like it's very, very boring and empty here, unless some of you join here now. But imagine me popping up a terminal now, like a Claude instance or something, and saying like, hey, connect to this instance and let's simulate collaborating. Let's simulate a 100-person chat conversation about whatever, soccer. And well, someone is already joining. But basically simulating different environments. Or let's say we're looking at the linear light example, and you are, there you go, it's already starting. Thank you for the simulation here. But you get the idea, like simulating different environments, or like basically just conversing with your LiveStore application, say like, hey, reset it. Or like there's so many interesting things that you can do with it that I'm really excited about. So those are the tools that you can use right now, and would love to hear your ideas on what you would like to do with that. This is basically just laying the foundations. All right, for the next one, this is the last chunky bit of the office hours that's already running a bit over time. I want to hand it over to Igor, who has been looking into a very interesting topic, which is very common, like in event sourcing, that you don't just have events, but often you also have commands. And we got the question quite a bit already. Hey, like, how does LiveStore things about events? Does it support commands? And Igor has been exploring that. And so I'm handing it over to Igor.
Thank you. So yeah, this is something that we've been thinking about for some time, but we're still early on this. There's still like a research and brainstorming phase that we haven't gone past through. But as Johanna said, 2 at least community members have raised this point, which is where do we place any like deciding logic for when there is a data change coming from a user? Like, where do we place authorization, business rules, and events? There is not like a clear place right now in LiveStore, and both, like most recently, like Antonio Mora has opened like a discussion on GitHub about this, which I'll link here if you guys want to read and also participate in the conversation. But also Ruby also raised that point, I think early this year, which was brought up also commands, as also Antonio did. And so just before getting into talking about commands, I just want to recap a bit how LiveStore syncing works today. So as you guys know, LiveStore revolves around events, which capture state changes and also propagate them to other clients. So when a user make a change, we commit that event, push it to the backend and then push it to the backend for distribution to other clients. And similarly to Git, if another client pushes a concurrent event first, the backend will reject our push because like a local event log is not yet up to date with the backend's event log. And to resolve this, LiveStore first revert our unpushed local event, pull the latest events from the backend, apply them to our local event log, then replay the unpushed events, and finally push those previously unpushed events to the backend. So this is very similar to doing like git pull -- rebase. And importantly, this means that concurrent event logs are reconciled on the clients and not on the server. Like in other syncing engine, often like this reconciliation happen on the server, but a key thing about LiveStore is that it happens on the client. So the client.
And to give an example where you want it to happen on the server, is like if you're playing a multiplayer game, like you want the reconciliation, like if you're like playing a shooter or something, and like you don't want on the client to say, no, like I'm behind the other guy. Like the server needs to like say for sure, like this is what's happening and broadcast it to everyone.
Exactly. And so pretty much clients bear the responsibility for merging concurrent event logs, so merging these changes. And so now coming back to the question, like where should we enforce like validation / business rules / invariants? If we take like, for example, a inventory management app that had a rule of that the system must maintain at least 5 items in stock, meaning users can't remove items if it would drop the stock below this threshold. And so in LiveStore, at this moment, we could like enforce this rule right before committing an event. So like, for instance, like in a form handler function, before we actually commit the event that items have been taken, we can have like a check where we read from the state database to see if there are enough items for us to take that amount of items that the user is trying to take. And if stock is sufficient, then we commit the event. If it's not, we can reject the action directly to the user, all done locally. Alternatively, not saying necessarily this is a good idea, but I'm trying really to think this a bit in a broader manner. We could, in theory, enforce it during the materialization of the state database, so meaning after the event is committed. So that could be either in the materializer function, where we have a check there, and if the check is rejected, that could mean maybe raising a rejection event or like a failure, like an invariant not respected or something like that, where this could prompt the user for solving something, or it could be also like a database constraint, so like a SQL check constraint where we check that the stock column is not below 5. But now there is something that's specific to LiveStore or to any like distributed system where clients can also write, and we have like multi-writer architecture, which is the concurrent scenario. So if we say we put the rules, like the enforcement of rules before we commit the event, there is a problem when we actually sync concurrent events where we have to replay. So let's say we have that rule being just like in the format event handler. And now let's say I do the change, I commit my event, but at the same time Johannes has also committed its event, and its event made that the stock is now at exactly 5. And so his event arrived first to the backend. So then I try to push, I get rejected by the backend. So I'm gonna pull his event, and then I try to apply his event, but I shouldn't be able to replay my event on top of his, because if I would do that, it would mean that the stock would get below 5. And so it would be nice to be able to enforce that rule, that business rule, for also when we're replaying the event. And so that's yet not really defined on how we handle this currently with LiveStore. And there is also something important to for us to take into account is that those rules that we enforce locally, depending on the app, they cannot be trusted. Like a user could just change the code and bypass those business rules and commit like some events that are not that shouldn't be accepted in the system. So for many apps, we want the server actually to be the authority and to not fully trust the client. There are some potential apps where we could say we fully trust the client. So you could imagine like where the inventory management app, like the app is only used by employees, and so you want to consider like an event that happens on the client as you can like fully trust it because it's from an employee and you trust everyone. Or you could also imagine like in a small like physician doctor where you have like a system where the computer on the doctor where they prescribe medicaments and all of that, like they register that as an event and you can trust because it's like a safe system. But most systems that we imagine, the apps that would be using LiveStore, we still want to not fully trust the client and to actually have the server as being the authority here. And so those are some open questions there, and there are multiple ways to think about resolving this. So one way that has been proposed, which is based on the CQRS architecture, is that we introduce a new primitive, which is a command, meaning when a command is it represents the intent of a user to do a change to the system. So here there would be like a command that would be called like take 5 items, and then this command which is an object that can be queued as well, would have like a corresponding like command handler, and within that command handler we would have all domain rules, invariants / authorization as well. And if it passes those rules, then we generate events. Otherwise we don't generate this event. The command can like fail, and then we get that feedback to the user. And this command could theoretically like only be executed on the client. So we have like a queue of command, and when there would be like a replay of events, like when we have a concurrent change where I have like to pull first Johannes event, I will pull Johannes event, and instead of like just replaying events, I would actually replay the commands with the command handlers, meaning that all the validation logic would be encapsulated in that command handler, and I would be able to reuse that function to check again if things are passing the rule or not, now that I have like my state that is updated. And so that those commands could theoretically run only on the client, but it could also be something that instead of like we are sending events to the backend, we actually send the command, and we expect the server to either accept the command or not. And in the meantime that we are not connected to the backend, we can have like provisional events that are generated on the client that are just used pretty much for us to still generate to materialize the state database. But then the server would then respond with, if they are able to actually accept the command, they would respond with like new events that we can trust. And so this command pretty much is a way for us to encapsulate all the validation logic, but we're still not fully clear on how exactly we want to implement this. We're still like in the researching phase, but we want to share already some of our thoughts in case some of you guys had some thoughts already there or already had experience some challenges with implementing validation with LiveStore.
Yeah, thanks so much for looking into this. This is, I think, a very important topic. Will probably be a 0.5 topic, and like for 0.5 release. Mm-hmm. And I think it will go hand in hand with a lot of the custom rebasing functionality that we are planning to ship as well. Goes probably also hand in hand with like the fact system that I've been researching in the past. So I think this is very timely. For most LiveStore users, it's probably a little bit more in the future. But as you've been like studying all of this like in depth, and you've been like studying all of like the literature, etc., I really appreciate you digging down into all the details and thinking through what that next generation looks like. And I'm really trying to make sure that LiveStore currently, I think, has like I've always been trying to keep it as simple as it can be, that like if you can get away with building a simple app and that's good enough for your use case, LiveStore should allow you and give you that simplicity, but then you should be incrementally bring in the primitives that you need and still in a way that conceptually it still stays simple. So that's kind of what I'm hoping for. So I appreciate you sharing some early thoughts on that. You've posted the discussion, the GitHub discussion, and where I think you're planning to share an initial spec draft as well soon. So this is where people can stay up to date. So thanks so much for sharing that. I think we'll wrap it up at this point and cover more questions in the future, as we've been already going a little bit longer than usual. So I just want to say thanks for joining, whoever is still listening and viewing at this point. The next office hours will be in a quarter from now, beginning of December. And if you're using LiveStore and you like it, would mean a lot if you'd consider sponsoring it. That helps us going. And, yeah, hope to see you in the community. Thank you so much. Alrighty, thanks so much for joining.